Up next on Tapestry, we're heading to Genesee County to explore Le Roy. We meet historian Lynne Belluscio, whose Barn Quilt Trail project grew to more than 100 vibrant murals.
The Barn Quilt project is kind of a favorite of mine, only because it involved parts of the community that had not been involved before.
Next, we pull up a chair at Mama Chavez's Taqueria, where the owner, Maria, is living out her retirement dream, cooking for the entire community.
I say, long as I can, I'll be here.
You'll be here, serving up families of Le Roy.
Yes, I love that.
And finally, we sit down with 22-year-old Sam Zerillo to hear how reviving the Le Roy Weekend Gazette is weaving local history and journalism back into the heart of the community.
I wanted to provide a trusted local source of news for people to read, but in return, I couldn't have done any of what I've done without the help from the community.
That's all coming up on Tapestry right after this.
Compact Science is your gateway to the science of everything in our region. Join host Sarah Jane Gomlick-Green and investigate the geology of Niagara Falls, discover the chemistry in sponge candy, and learn how density affects lake effect snow. Watch Compact Science on the Buffalo Toronto Public Media YouTube channel.
From in-depth reporting to musical masterpieces, dramas, and mysteries to local bands, Buffalo Toronto Public Media delivers it all. Stay informed, be inspired, and join us. This is Public Media.
Welcome to Tapestry. I'm your host, Lynne Bader. In 2011, as Le Roy prepared to celebrate its bicentennial, local historian Lynne Belluscio envisioned a way to draw visitors into the countryside. And in the following years, her Barn Quilt Trail would blossom into one of New York's largest, transforming barns, garages, and homes into vibrant canvases of community pride. Lynne Belluscio.
Yes.
It's Lynne Bader. Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you. I'm glad you're here today.
Thank you so much for meeting us out here in, I'm going to get it right, Le Roy.
You've got it right.
That's right. We could talk about the debate.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay, here's the deal. The town is named after one of the original landowners, Herman Le Roy, from France. At some point, it was changed to Le Roy, and nobody can really prove when or why. So for today's episode, I'm just going to use both. After admiring Lynne's own barn quilt, we sat down to talk about the origin of the project. I read an article and it said, I quote, "The JELL-O Museum, the Le Roy Transportation Museum, the historic Le Roy House, the Underground Railroad Tour, and the Barn Quilt Trail all bring tens of thousands of people to Le Roy each year. None of these attractions existed before Lynne Belluscio became curator of the Le Roy Historical Society."
Oh, my.
I know. None of it would have existed.
Maybe. I mean, I think some of that would have happened anyway, but, once you kind of grab a hold of an idea, it's fun to run with it.
Right.
And so all those things were really fun to run with. The Barn Quilt project is kind of a favorite of mine, only because it involved parts of the community that had not been involved before. We wanted people to recognize that the driving economic force in Le Roy, which a lot of people don't realize, because JELL-O left in 1964, is our farming, our agriculture. And so with the barn quilts, if the barn quilts were going up on barns around the community, it got people out into the town to see barns and farms and cows, and then to get people involved to paint their own barn quilts, as it turned out. I did a barn quilt at the Awaka Festival. That was the first one that I did, which is the hometown festival, and it's always in July. And so to get people interested in the project, I painted a barn quilt at the festival, and the first one that I painted was JELL-O Jigglers. And so we painted it in the colors of JELL-O. So if you look at the
like your bright colors, right?
Right. So there's lemon yellow, there's orange, there's all that sort of stuff. And that barn quilt still hangs on the entrance to the JELL-O Museum.
You started the project with a pretty modest goal.
Yeah. See, we started in 11 with the thought that in 2012 we were going to have our bicentennial for the town. And so I figured if I get 25 up, that's a lot. Well, we had 75 up
Wow.
in that first year. And that was really great. People really wanted to participate. We had busloads of people. I mean, come on, and they would call and say, "Would you get on the bus and give us a tour?" And I'd say, "How much time have you got?" Because we have, now with the new barn quilt map, we have 120 barn quilts on that map.
And they're not just on barns. I think that was really interesting too, that the project kind of bloomed before your very eyes.
Oh, yes. There's one on a garden fence. We had, school kids that painted barn quilts. We did I think it was the 4th grade class. They were studying pioneers, and they did it's called the log cabin pattern. We had school kids that did the notorious one that is Amelia Earhart, which is on the side of the hangar where Amelia Earhart's airplane was. And so the 4th graders, again, learning local history.
Right.
About this airport, the Donald Woodward Airport. Don Woodward was the youngest son of the JELL-O magnate, and he built this huge airport. And he bought the Friendship, which is the airplane in which Amelia flew across the Atlantic, and she became Lady Lindy.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you make a barn quilt?
You start with really good plywood, and you don't use pressure treated. You want to make sure that you put lots of really good primer on it, and make sure that the edges, because you don't want water getting into it, and you prime the back. And then you wait for that to dry, and then you plot your design. It's good if you're a quilter to do either a 4 square or a 9 square. If you do a 9 square,
That reminds me of like Brady Bunch or Hollywood Squares. Is that a 9 square?
Okay. Hollywood Squares is a 9 square. You are right.
Literally.
Oh, wow, I like that analogy. But you got to make sure that where the two boards come together, that the pattern is
right,
is going to be. There's a barn quilt around the corner that I painted, and I was off. I didn't have the two pieces together when I painted it. I was off by, I thought I'd measured, okay. I was off by an inch. And maybe, most people wouldn't have noticed, but every time I drove by it. So we took it down and I repainted it. And just, kind of make sure that it leveled out.
Do you have a favorite?
No. I'm not going to play favorites. I have a couple of favorites because of the story. I have a couple because of the history. I have a couple only because of I know the people that painted it. But each one is kind of unique in many ways. Right around the corner is this really wonderful pink and white one. It's a combination of triangles. The gal that painted it, Marnie Frost Clear, she took the pattern from a quilt that's been in the family since the 1800s. But even more so, the pink squares in it were taken from a dress. They know that it was taken from a dress that was worn by one of the family members back in the 1860s. We've got the Eclipse one, which I painted last year. The design was taken from a children's book that was written, and it's about these animals who, the cow in particular, is telling the animals that they have to wear the safety glasses. And so...
It's adorable.
And it's a wonderful book. I got a copy of the book, and I'm looking at the design. The cows all live in a barn, a red barn, but on the barn is a barn quilt.
So my grandmother was a quilter.
Yeah.
And I remember visiting her often and going into her basement because she would always have a quilt laid out, right?
Yeah.
And my favorite quilt is the one that she made me for my high school graduation. And so the idea of what quilts mean to people and mean to families, it warms my heart to know that Le Roy has such a beautiful sentiment throughout its entire town.
You just said that, and I'm going, why in blazes didn't I do a barn quilt of the pattern of the quilt that my grandmother made for me? And I never did.
Hey, you still have time.
You bet.
All right, let's go on a tour.
Okay.
All right, great.
Okay, so we're going to go see two barn quilts right here. There's a little one right there, do you see?
Oh, yeah, I see it.
A little,
And what's that one called again?
That's the Eclipse.
That's the Eclipse one.
That's the Eclipse one. Here's that one that I told you about right here that we rebuilt. Isn't it beautiful?
I think I see a quilt.
Do you see a barn quilt?
I do.
It gets to the point where you're driving around and you're saying, how come that barn doesn't have a barn quilt?
Lynne took us all over, and the end of the tour happened to be the next stop in our day.
Okay, Mama Chavez's is right here. So I will pull up to the door. Do you see their
Oh, yeah.
see their barn quilt?
They have a barn quilt.
They do. It's the Mexican flag.
That's very cool.
I did that for them. I wanted them on the barn quilt trail.
Look at this, door-to-door service.
And it's Taco Tuesday.
Of course it is.
It is. No.
I know.
It's Taco Tuesday.
Well, Lynne, thank you so much for the tour and for spending time with us this morning.
Hey,
I really appreciate it.
I was fun to do.
Good.
Come back again sometime.
I think we will. The family story behind what some call the best burritos in town is up next, right after this snapshot of Le Roy history.
It wiggles, it jiggles. And believe it or not, it all started in Le Roy, New York. Back in 1897, a carpenter named Pearl Waite was experimenting with gelatin and fruit flavoring in his kitchen. His wife, May, gave it the name we all know, JELL-O. But Pearl was not a marketer. He sold the rights for just $450 to a local businessman, Orator Woodward. And that's when things really took off. Woodward launched a national ad campaign, and by the early 1900s, JELL-O was a household name. Le Roy became the official hometown of America's favorite dessert. Flavors like raspberry, orange, and lemon flew off the shelves. And JELL-O even had its own cookbook, celebrity endorsements, and later, those iconic TV ads with the catchy jingle.
JELL-O. And I like it.
Today, JELL-O is no longer made in Le Roy, but the town keeps the legacy alive at the JELL-O Gallery Museum, where the history of dessert gets the spotlight it deserves.
No matter how you serve it, there's always room for JELL-O.
Today, we're spending our lunch hour in the heart of downtown Le Roy at Mama Chavez's Taqueria, visiting with owner Maria Chavez and one of her sons, Jose Jr. This is as much a family story as it is a restaurant story. And that story starts long before the first taco was served. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate it, Maria.
Well, thank you guys for thinking of us
Absolutely.
to do this interview. I love that.
What inspired you to move to Le Roy and open up a restaurant?
My original, I'm coming from Guanajuato, Mexico. Mm-hmm. I come from a big family of 12. 6 girls and 6 boys. And, well, you know, when it's a big family, they all want help mom to cook. And that was the number 5 in my family, so... You
were right in the middle.
Right on the middle.
Okay.
So I help my mom, and this is a good thing because they teach me how to do all this stuff.
Those early lessons in Mexico stuck with Maria through decades of hard work, all the way to retirement. As she tried to teach me how to make taco shells, Maria shared her view of the perfect retirement plan.
What was your other career?
I used to work on Chavez International in Batavia. I worked there for...
Is this done, or do I need another minute?
Little
more. Okay.
Yeah, you gotta take it out of there
Okay.
and let it cook a little longer.
All right.
And I retired from Chavez, and I said, well, we gotta do something. Well, money's tight. What do you wanna do? And my son's friend used to work in here. Mm-hmm. And they have closed down for a long time. I came and I said, no, I don't want to do it. It's too small.
You got a griddle, you got a stove here.
I told the kids, if you guys want me to work in here, you guys got to buy me a stove. Because if not, I'm not want to work.
That was the deal.
Yes.
All right.
So, thank God, I draw out my 401k. We don't have to ask for loans to anybody.
Really?
Yeah. So, that's what I did. I take all my 401k in. Like I said, like this, we can do whatever, We don't have to pay loans and all that stuff. And that's the thing, I love that. Like I told the kids, this is yours.
Yep.
You know, you work it and you guys get your own paycheck. And that's the way we want to be doing.
All right.
You know, and I told the kids, I said, long as I can, I'll be here.
You'll be here serving up families of Le Roy.
Yes, I love that.
Well, I was going to ask you, you've been open since 2019.
Yes.
And it's 2025 now, so 6 years.
Yes, 6 years.
What do you love about being a restaurateur?
Just love to be in here.
Yeah?
Just love being here with my kids and my husband. So, you know.
It's a family way of life.
That's a family thing. So,
Yes.
like I said, when we opened, the COVID hit.
Yes.
That was bad. I was like, oh my God, now what?
Now what?
I said, let's go think about it. Let's do it like Mexico. And my times, they used to sell stuff through the windows.
Yep.
So I said, let's go open a window.
Maria works alongside her husband, Jose Sr., her son Armando, and her son Jose Jr., who remembers how challenging COVID was for their business.
It got a little crazy for us, so we kind of had to get a little creative, and we ended up using our front window, as a takeout window. We had a little tent set up out there, and a sign, come order here.
Yeah.
So we made do with kind of what we were left with. So, so with that, we got a lot of support. Le Roy's a very strong community. Growing up here, graduating from Le Roy and stuff, we've been pretty fortunate to come across a lot of great people here.
Yes.
And, so they all came out, and supported us, and it'll be 6 years this July that it'll be our 6th year anniversary. So.
What a dream to open up a family restaurant.
It is. It's something that we've always talked about. Again, being from Le Roy, my mom would always little activities and stuff. She'll make food, would take them into class, whether it be for like a party or home ec class. There's a couple times that she came in during our home ec classes to kind of
because nobody was bringing in tacos.
Yeah, no, not at all. So everybody loved it, so a lot of people had a little taste of our food and stuff. So that once we opened, it was great to see, the same people come back. And, Le Roy, you still get a lot of people, it's teachers, students that still live here, or former students that live here and have their families to raise and stuff,
Yeah.
They come here and we're very blessed for sure.
The name of the restaurant, Mama Chavez, was earned long before the sign went up outside the building.
And all my daughter's friends call me Mama Chavez. All of them call me Mama Chavez. I make the rice every day. We try to do fresh as we can,
The food is fresh and the menu has grown slowly. Enchiladas, chimichangas, empanadas, and of course tacos. But at the heart of it is still home cooking.
The salsa, I make the salsa sometimes 3 times a week.
You are able to share your culture and your heritage with the community.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it means something to your family to be able to do this.
Yes.
Because in Le Roy, there's not a Mexican restaurant on every corner.
No. And
are you the only one?
Yes. I'm here in Le Roy, yes.
Okay.
So, and a lot of people from Batavia that comes and she said, oh, this really feels like you eating at home. I said, that's the way I want. I want you guys feel like home.
What does it mean to have your family together with you on this ride?
I love that. I don't know about that, but for me, I love it having them here.
Well, Mama Chavez, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time with me today.
Oh, my God.
And it is my hope that you're going to make the crew and myself some homemade lunch.
Oh, whatever you guys want, You want chimichangas, you want some enchiladas, you want some burritos, you want some hard-shell tacos.
You got us covered.
Hey, whatever you guys want.
Our crew left with full stomachs on our way to meet Sam Zerillo and Ben Beagle to talk about the reincarnation of the Le Roy Weekend Gazette. That's up next, right after this.
Explore the Underground Railroad's final stop. Learn about how the Latine workforce organized to overcome discrimination and follow the timeline of immigration in Western New York.
So remember, history surrounds you and includes you.
Watch Compact History on the Buffalo Toronto Public Media YouTube channel.
From your morning commute to quiet evenings at home, Buffalo Toronto Public Media is always there with trusted news, inspiring stories, and timeless music. It's your connection to a world of wonder. This is Public Media.
Welcome back to Tapestry. I'm your host, Lynne Bader. We're closing out today's episode by celebrating a powerful comeback in local journalism. After 3 decades of silence, the Le Roy Weekend Gazette is back in circulation, revived by 22-year-old Sam Zerillo. Raised in the newspaper business, Sam has combined his passion for history with his journalism training to bring new life to a beloved hometown paper. I sat down with Sam and his mentor, Ben Beagle, to hear how it all came together. Sam, Ben, thanks for joining me today.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak about my newspaper.
So talk to me, what inspired you to bring the Weekend Gazette back?
It really started when I graduated from college. I went to John Carroll University in Cleveland, graduated with a degree in history and political science. And my dream at the time was to find my way into a museum somewhere, maybe as an archivist or something in the back end of a museum. I'm not much of a people person, I guess, or at least I didn't think I was back then. But
oh well, look what happened. I don't know.
While I was in between things, I was offered a job here. It was sort of like an entry-level job, something to work while I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go next. When I was sorting through my things and moving stuff around, I happened to come across a copy of the Le Roy Gazette, the original Le Roy Gazette, that was my grandmother's. You know, I set it aside, and I even framed one of the articles from that copy because it was talking about the history of Le Roy in it. It gave me the idea, like, to start researching it a little bit more, like who ran it, why did it stop. So my research led me, and my colleague Barrett Funderburk, who's back there, does page layout here, down quite the rabbit hole to try and figure out the history of the paper. It turned into not just historical research about the paper, but it sort of morphed along the way into, well, why can't we bring it back? I put together a proposal. I pitched it to some of the higher-ups of SMG Batavia and Sample News Group, who's the company that owns the Batavia Daily News, and they gave me a month.
They said 1 month, we'll give you a month, we'll see what happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. And this is where Ben Beagle enters the story.
Well, I'm the regional editor here at the Daily News, so I oversee editorial for the Daily and also the Livingston County News. At some point in the process of Sam developing the idea for the Gazette, I got pulled into a couple of meetings as it got closer to the it's going to happen process. And we started meeting to discuss how it was going to come together, what was going to be the vision for it, what was going to be the voice. And so I asked the questions of Sam, what kind of newspaper did you want to have? One of the things that I think sets the Gazette apart from the Daily is the style and the voice. You know,
Explain that a little bit.
You read the stories in the Gazette, and he describes it as a rustic charm, and it really is more of a hometown feel. It's the writer, Sam's voice. He has you alongside him.
It says, I'm holding a copy in my hand, and it says your hometown guide to news, events, local businesses, and more. Then the cover story is Le Roy Little League Baseball 2025 is just a week away. It makes me think about growing up in a smaller town, right? What are the traditions that you remember growing up in Le Roy that you want to carry forth to the next generation?
Le Royans just they want and need something that's theirs, and there really was like a void there. And while the Batavia Daily News does cover Le Roy to a degree, it's still, I think, to a lot of Le Royans, didn't feel like it was truly theirs.
Yes.
And one of the very first things I learned in journalism was and especially working in community journalism, is that sense of ownership that people have in their hometown paper. Sam knew right away that was there.
Absolutely.
And it's got a lot of flavor of what they had, and it's giving them more of what they were missing, and it's got a lot of community involvement in it, and that was something that he also wanted from the beginning.
It's clear what you are giving the community by putting out this newspaper. What does the community need to give you in return?
I wanted to provide a trusted local source of news for people to read, but in return, I couldn't have done any of what I've done without the help from the community. Along with Ben Beagle's guidance, my colleague and my closest friend, Barrett Funderburg, he helped me through so much of this, and Jamie, our sales rep over there, her and I...
shout out to Jamie. There you go.
Bat ideas back and forth all the time, and like a lot of the interviews that I set up and content that we include, I collaborate with her heavily for that. This wasn't just me. I certainly cannot and will not take all the credit for the Gazette here. The community outside of this building has backed me in ways that I never expected. Out in the community, I've done stories with Henry's Deli and Cade's Diner and Dio's Treasures, and a lot of these local stores that I love to be able to highlight. And Ben had mentioned that people submit letters to the editor and contribute to our local events tab quite frequently, and I'm happy to provide that resource, especially to the nonprofits in our area. It's just it's incredible to me just how much the community has embraced this paper. There was a lot of uncertainty going into it. I mentioned that I was given a month to prove that there was something here, and we're still here almost 6 months later, and that is largely almost entirely due to the support, the constant flow of support I get from the town and village of Le Roy.
So we're gonna go ahead and let you get back to work, because I know you're working on a story right now, and we interrupted you to cover that story. I'm really proud, as also a member of the media, to have met you, and really just honored to speak with you this afternoon about your dedication. And it makes me very hopeful for journalism in the future.
Thank you very much.
That wraps up this episode of Tapestry. Next week, we head to Perry, New York in Wyoming County. From a family of artisan cheesemakers to a new community-supported bookstore to a group of creatives returning to Perry to shake things up, including reviving a storytelling club to bring neighbors together. It's all about community. I hope you'll join me. Tapestry is a production of Buffalo Toronto Public Media, and you can listen to all of our episodes at btpm.org or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Lynne Bader. Thank you for listening.